Welcome to Songs for Humanity. This video's theme is Restless Mind. This is a very timely topic for me because I've had to deal with some problems that seem to arise from this quality of the mind. I sometimes tend to have trouble concentrating on a single task and just getting stuff done when I need to get it done. I get this itch to do something else for a moment because it feels like if I force myself not to, I'll quickly run into this mental wall where my productivity drops a lot because I have to use so much energy to keep the mind focused on that one thing. And there's this back and forth battle between taking breaks in order to not strain your mind too much for too long, and on the other hand, not letting go too much, because that can cause a snowball effect of not being able to concentrate at all. And I'm sure I'm far from the only one with that problem, and it's a very interesting topic, so let's dive into it a little bit. By the way, I'll also be painting a picture so that you have something interesting to watch while I'm talking. The human brain is inherently restless to begin with. It's not a machine that can be shut down. It's always processing, reacting, directing things, even when we are asleep. So it seems logical that the mind is also somewhat restless, in that there's always new information to take in, new thoughts forming from that information, etc. And it just depends on the situation whether that restlessness has negative or positive effects on you. But immediately we come across two pressing questions. One, brain is restless, but how exactly does the brain relate to the mind, which is a much more difficult thing to precisely define. And two, what exactly makes the effects of this restlessness be bad for you or good for you? For the question number one, there's luckily an easy answer. No one knows for sure. There's no scientific consensus on how consciousness and the subjective experience of reality actually forms and works. It's referred to as the heart problem of consciousness. Many, of course, believe in the idea that it's just all the neural processes happening in the brain somehow emerging as this thing we call consciousness. But so far, no one has been able to show how it actually happens in detail and what distinguishes a human mind from, say, a computer running an AI program, which is also processing information, forming new neural connections, making decisions, etc. There's certainly a lot of theories about it, though. And while I'd love to really dive into these, I think they sort of miss the core point of this particular video, which is going to be long enough, even without them. So I'll just concentrate on my and other people's subjective experiences and hope that they can give you some new stuff to think about. Because even if there's no final answers to questions about consciousness, what is true for us is that the way we think and feel about the world really matters a lot to our life experience. And you certainly can cultivate your worldviews and thinking patterns to whatever direction you want to. A user from the Songs for Humanity subreddit writes, "The nature of consciousness really does seem to be more of a disordered and directionless jumble of half-thoughts than a neat and regular queue of well-formed opinions and realizations. I often think it's a minor miracle that this chaotic perceptual overload can ever be shaped into anything even remotely resembling a consistent identity or self. No doubt we are each engaged in a daily project of self-deception, endlessly filtering out the perceptual information that doesn't fit our incomplete, low-resolution templates of who, what, where, when, why, and how we are. And that puts nicely the regular feeling, for me at least, that I don't often really know who I am and what the heck I'm doing here. And it can be scary too to face the brittleness of our mind. It's certainly much easier in the short term to just not really think about it and keep going with the lighter, easier, more entertaining things. And this is where I think we come to the first essential part of getting on the right track with our restless minds. It's learning to really face it and embrace it. That restlessness is very often portrayed as a weakness of the mind, but it doesn't have to be. Another user writes, "To me, this curious and the most charming feature, that our mind is restlessly going here and there, is actually no less than the main essence of our consciousness. This beautiful vagueness and non-predictability of thought is the consequence of our rich sensations and perceptions about the fabric of cosmos. I wonder if anybody can doom this feature as something negative, because it is the broad stream of our life." And another comment, I do not think there are any negative sides on this feature itself. The only one who can make it negative is the person himself or herself. It's all about how we use this so-called mind, how much we force, how much we dare to let go of, how much we surrender, how much we control. But how exactly does one go about facing it? Well, there's a lot of possibilities, but I think one of the most powerful everyday tools for that is to just stop and do nothing for a while at all. Just make a little bit of time for yourself to really just sit down and do nothing. No phone, no music, no book, no thinking about the next vacation. 5-10 minutes of just being there and not intentionally thinking about anything. Now, thoughts and feelings will come in their numbers, but that's completely okay. Just don't engage. Let them come, acknowledge them, and then let them go. If you go with the thoughts and start daydreaming about stuff, you'll just be going with the flow of the mind. But in this exercise, the idea is to just observe the flow from outside. The letting the thoughts go part can be a bit difficult sometimes, and it helps if you have at least something to concentrate on, sort of get back to if you lose focus. Breathing is a good one and what I usually use. So every time I notice my thoughts are drifting me away somewhere, I just get back to concentrating on my breathing. What this practice is often called is obviously meditation, one form of it at least. If practiced enough, it helps you get better at concentration, calmness, and just overall mental composure and discipline. So while the restlessness in itself is not a bad thing, meditation coaches you to get above it in a sense. It calms your mind and makes everything more manageable and clear. And it helps you to be more aware of and content with your mind's inner workings. The other question I asked in the beginning was, what makes the effects of the restlessness be bad for you or good for you? Well, we just came to the conclusion that there's nothing bad in the thing itself. At least I did. But then why does this natural part of the mind sometimes cause negative effects? That's obviously another question with no definitive answers, but I feel like there's some common elements that define this. So the restlessness can be, in many situations and mindsets, a very positive experience. You know, daydreaming, brainstorming, flowing with random thoughts, etc. But sometimes we do have these negative experiences that seem to be connected to the restlessness. So what causes that? Well, first of all, what makes that state of mind negative is that it feels bad in some way, at least in retrospect. And as simple as that sounds, that's the key to tracking down the negative origins, is first of all recognizing that you feel bad because of the state of your mind, and then asking why does it feel bad. Often the why comes from external sources, like when you're at work, like this user writes. Of course, to dream, to let your mind freely wander, might be perceived as a bad habit, definitely not productive enough at least in today's society. And if you are trying to get a job done, so to speak, it can be a problem. So it feels bad because there's external expectations to be productive. Another external one is when you've been exposed to some noisy or overstimulating environments or content, and the restlessness gets amplified because of that, to the point where it interferes with relaxing or even sleeping. Problematic social media habits can also seem like they originate from the restlessness, but I'd say it just acts as sort of a spark to some other very flammable internal stuff. Aversion to boredom, fear of missing out, the dopamine reward system, the force of habitualization, etc. Those habits can cause problems in everyday life when it becomes difficult to get through any longer tasks without interfering it with checking the stuff on the phone. In other cases, there's not any clear practical problems like that, but it still feels bad because you feel like you're supposed to be doing something else or be in a different state of mind. Not necessarily in the workplace or anything like that. You could be anywhere in a situation where you don't need to accomplish anything or do anything productive. So it's not just procrastination. And you are filling that time with something non-productive, maybe some easy entertainment or something else that doesn't require any effort and lets the mind doze off. But instead of feeling pure enjoyment from the physical and mental relaxation and the freedom of not having to do anything, you only feel that on the surface level. And under that is a looming feeling of some kind of mental distress and even guilt. The interesting thing here is that everyone knows and agrees that a human needs some downtime, and that is not a bad thing to just relax and let go for a while every so often. But still there's often this uneasy feeling about it. And this is where it sometimes becomes really difficult for me to track down the negative origins. And often in this situation, the best approach is to start asking yourself some relevant questions. Like, are you falling for the desire for instant gratification? And that's what bothers you on that deeper level. Maybe there's some internalized goals or values you'll set to yourself, consciously or subconsciously, that are being blocked from advancing by this mental and physical directionless state. And if that's the case, do those goals and values really come from inside? Are they put there and endorsed by yourself? Or are they internalized from external influences? You know, maybe there's a sense of what it's like to be a high-functioning person, a sense that actually comes from some dogmatic societal preconceptions. Or maybe you actually do want to change your stubborn entertainment habits that are messing with your reward system and start devoting more time towards some goal. And then again, if that's the case, are you being too hard on yourself and not allowing some well-needed resting time? You can see that this investigation can quickly become an endless back and forth when trying to find the golden mean. And it's good to realize that nothing in life is absolute, and that many answers can be right in a given context based on what you want from life. But what all of this really boils down to is that the best thing you can do to yourself if you have problems with the restlessness of the mind is to practice monitoring yourself. Practice diving into your mind and trying to see what's going on in there. Also practice being content with boredom. Be aware, be honest with yourself, and try to obtain many different perspectives on things, different viewpoints. That combination should open up a lot of paths forward to wherever you want to go. But what's the point anyway? Why wouldn't I just go about my life without making everything so complicated and difficult? Well, you totally could if you wanted. That's one perspective. For me personally, those kind of mental exercises and self-development paths are amazing opportunities to make the most out of this whole weird conscious experience we call life. Also, being more aware of yourself makes you more aware of your surroundings and your effect on them, which is very important. It feels like now more than ever, humanity could use a lot more of that. You know, nowadays, for me, a permanent part of those perspectives is always the future of humanity in the face of climate change and other environmental catastrophes we are causing to this planet. And yeah, I want to take a moment for the ending of this video to talk about climate change, because it's such an extremely pressing issue, and because it can sometimes be paralyzing to think about. I mean, the world surely doesn't seem to be uniting at large to combat this issue right the flaming now like it needs to. There's a lot of rising awareness, which is great, but it seems like the wheel of big global changes is turning all too slowly. Many of us are simply losing hope. I just want to say bugger off to those thoughts. I don't want to waste my time being cynical and hopeless. Even if the ship really is going down, I don't want to go down in agony. I want to go down singing beautiful songs, doing my best to save the ship anyway, taking in the most of this incredible reality before moving on. And besides, nobody knows what's really gonna happen in the long term. We just can't know for sure. The system is way too complicated. And because of that, we cannot afford giving up. While we can't know the exact outcome, we do know, thanks to tireless research by countless scientists, that the current way of powering our society and supplying our lifestyle is not sustainable. We also know a great deal about what could help the environment and what we need to do to make everything sustainable. There's a staggering consensus among scientists that we need to lower our emissions. A human is restless. We have billions of restless minds constantly coming up with new stuff. It's all just about what we collectively decide to do. The planet will probably be fine for a good while. It's just that can we as a global society not cause our own collapse and instead sustainably use what the planet has given to us to keep expanding the understanding, the knowledge, the perspectives about what this reality is about. We are the single best chance life as we know it has ever had to get out there. And we need to get out there eventually if we want to keep existing. And what can we do? Well, there's a lot of practical steps everyone can take right now, as you probably know. These are all essential steps that we all need to try to take. But in addition to that, what's really important is to cultivate a sense of unitedness to the rest of humanity. All of it. We can't afford having any us versus them mentality if we are to solve this problem in a sensible way. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.